Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Anthony Victoria, and you're on another episode of Let's Clear the Air. So tonight, I'm here with Gracie Torres, and I'll allow her to introduce herself real quick.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Gracie Torres. I was newly elected to Western Municipal Water District's Board of Directors, and I am also very proud to say that I will be serving on the board for CCAEJ.
Awesome. Yeah, so Gracie, why don't we start off by just having a conversation about just your experience in the community, right? You're an elected official now. You're on our board. You're a social justice advocate. So just tell us a little bit about your personal life and what motivated you to get involved in this type of work.
Okay. So first and foremost, I am a mother of three. I have 3 little babies, but I am also a water scientist. And that began when I was in school. I was actually a medical student. I wanted to be in the medical field. But at the same time, I had 2 kids and needed a job. So what I did is got a job at our campus. I'm gonna sit down a little. I got a job at our campus water lab. And so I'm going to tell you a story, 'cause that's my favorite.
I love stories.
Well, when I had just started, it was actually the best job on campus as far as I'm concerned. It paid very well. We had a good boss. And so we went out to Lake Elsinore, and we were going to sample water. And we get there. It's cold. It's in the 5 in the morning, so it's dark. We get on this little pontoon boat, and we get on there and we get into the lake. And what we had to do is basically capture water in this big tube. It was like this tube, and it's called a Van Doren. So we had to capture it in this tube. The way it worked was basically it had 2 flaps, and we had to send down this huge iron weight, and the weight would basically hit the top of that tube and snap the flaps together. So it would catch water in the lake at no pressure, with no air inside. So I remember it was my first time. Again, at this point, I was not interested in water, and besides needing a job. So what I did, but I was excited to try this thing, right? So I have the weight, and it's tied to this pole. I drop down the Van Doren. I'm holding the weight, and I'm like ready to just like shoot it down. So I get it, and I shoot as hard as I can, and boom, it like hits the boat. It goes nowhere, super embarrassing. I did that like 2 or 3 times. And finally, like when I had it, okay, I got further away from the boat so it wouldn't happen again. But I remember holding the rope, and I'm holding this metal rod over my head, and I shoot it down, and I could feel the vibration of this metal rod going down, iron rod. And it like goes down into the lake, and it just slams and click. I could feel the click on the rope. That's how vibrant it was. And I just knew, like, I caught my first sample of water. I lifted it up. We, put it in its bottles, put it on ice, everything you're supposed to do. And we got back outside of analyzing and all of that. I just remember how freaking excited I was because what I was about to do was to test the water at Lake Elsinore. This report was real. It was going to go to physically fix something in our environment. And even at that point, I wasn't passionate about it. It felt like a real work. And so I went straight to my counselor's office and switched my major and said, I want to do environmental work. I want to do specifically water quality. I continued working in that lab. Now I work for flood control, and I specialize in stormwater management, which basically what that means is, so when a drop of rain falls on our urbanized areas, that drop of rain goes down the street, goes down our storm drain systems, and it should be just water. But what happens is water collects every single thing that it can come into contact with, and that includes the pollutants that we leave on the streets. So my job is to ensure that only rain goes down a storm drain. Yeah, so that's what I do.
Yeah, it's a interesting process. It sounds like I didn't know that amount of work went into
sampling water.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
and that's just lake water. There's all kinds of different sampling that I've had a chance to do, but to me it's interesting work because we live in an era where feels like sometimes it feels like science is in the back burner. People don't want to believe scientists. They don't, they don't want, they want these like quick fixes to things. And so for me, it really feels like I'm doing something that's going to serve a purpose. If we don't see it now, we'll hopefully see it in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. So yeah, I think you're definitely right. I think a lot of times when people speak science, when they talk about air quality, water contamination, folks are discredited for having these notions of alarm, right? Because they're trying to clean that up. They're trying to make sure that people have safe, clean water to drink or clean air to breathe. And so we're seeing that a lot, quite frankly, right? And in politics, we're seeing that in society. And it just kind of shocks me that there isn't a lot of alarm when it comes to this. And so as an official now, as a member of the Western Municipal Water District, I always get confused with that name. What's among your goals for getting, for serving your community, and for also maybe, I'm not too familiar, quite frankly, with what the water district deals with. But I definitely am. I mean, we're all open to learning. And so what are some of the things that maybe you've identified throughout your time serving so far? Or maybe just what are some of the things that you want to accomplish?
So just in general, the water district, the board ensures that the water district is allocating the money that they collect from ratepayers, and they do so responsibly. Basically, that's what the board is doing. And just like the board would with CCAEJ, they just ensure that organization is being responsible with their budget and staff and things like that. So that's just general. But while I was running, something that really resonated with the constituents in my area was the fact that I was a scientist and not just a politician. So I understood water, not like, quite frankly, and probably super cheesy. I understand water at a molecular level. So you're not getting this person that might be a developer or that their interests are in themselves and making money or whatever, right? You're getting somebody that understands the concept of water and wants to do what's right, not just by the ratepayers, but for the environment. And I think that really resonated with my constituency. And so a lot of what we would say is like, hey, let's put scientists at a table. And like I said, we're in a time where I felt that people just weren't open to science anymore. They were like, no, thank you. And what my race proved is that no, people are still ready to listen. They want to make sure that the people who are making decisions for them are doing them based on unbiased decisions, based on facts, based on real science. And so that's one of the biggest things that I wanted to accomplish was like, hey, let's get a scientist at the table so that the decisions being made are science-based. And we did that. So we won that race. But now there are a few things that really are important to me. One of them is transparency, right? A lot of water districts are ignored, and that's because people don't find water issues very interesting. So what I want to do is I want to put it in the forefront. I want people to understand what their water district does. I want them to understand what their board members are doing, the decisions they're making. When you have an issue, and you understand this as an advocate, when you have an issue at the local level, a lot of us are thinking, hey, what can this congressman do for me? What can this senator do for me? And they have no real impact. The people who have your impact are your city council members, your water board members. They have the actual impact on things that happen to you on your daily life. And so I want people to understand that, and that happens through transparency. One thing that I've started doing is on Tuesday nights before my board meetings, I'll go over the agenda live. So that people understand what items are going to be on there, what change orders, what budget items, what increases or decreases will there be, so that they really understand. That's one thing is transparency. The next thing that I want to change or I want to advocate for is water quality. Obviously, there in our area, we're blessed. We're very privileged to know that we can open the tap, drink the water, and not die of Ebola. Right? We're blessed, right? Yeah. But there are actually areas in California where people are not that privileged. They open their tap water, they still have to filter it a few times because they could literally be drinking metals and metal byproducts.
Are there any local water districts that are currently dealing with that?
In Imperial Valley, the people in Imperial Valley, Coachella Valley, their water has arsenic in it. And so they're, we used to say when I was working in our water lab, we were looking at some filters to kind of fix that issue. And one of the things we looked at was Phoslock, which you put into your fish tank, and that removes arsenic out of water. And we used to say, wow, our fish have better water than the people in Imperial Valley, which is kind of sad to think about because it's clearly an easy fix. So obviously the resources aren't there to fix something that seems so simple. And so that's one thing that I mean, that's again, it's outside of my area, but I want to make sure that water quality is always in the forefront, that we don't end up in a society where one day we turn our water on and it's brown and we have an issue like Flint or Imperial Valley, right? So that's and of course I'm going to advocate for that. That's my bread and butter is water quality. Sure. And then the last thing that I really think is important is conservation. I happen to be in the area where my ratepayers complain about their high water bills. And a big reason for their high water bills is that we have to buy water from Northern California. We live in an area that's very arid, that doesn't have very much water. And the areas that do have water, they want to keep that water. They don't want to share it, right? Not for free. So what Western does is they have to buy water from Northern California. They buy water from the Colorado River. They buy water from even Riverside public utilities, and that because they're buying water. And just for the record, when we say we buy water, we're not just physically buying these molecules of water. We're paying for treatment so that the water is clean, and we're also paying for it to be transferred to your faucet. And so one thing that is important is really getting rid of our dependency on Northern California water. Because that's what costs a lot of money. And that happens through conservation, through ensuring that we are refilling our aquifers, that we are capturing stormwater, different ways. And so those types of issues I really am going to advocate for while I'm in the water board, on the water board.
Wow. I feel like I'm going through an educational session, like if I'm in class. But no, that's really good information, because I think people aren't aware of that, right? And I think, when I was reporting for IECN, I remember speaking to this folks at the San Bernardino Municipal Water District, and I think at the San Bernardino Valley Water District, I think that's what it's called. And they said the same thing. They're getting water from Northern California. I'm not too familiar with what source, but I know that's a thing, right? Purchasing water and making sure that this is being transferred. And I know that there's been a shortage, right? And I know one of the areas that's hit the hardest, or that's been hit the hardest historically, has been the Inland Empire, right? And so so that's good information, and I think it's necessary, right? So I guess another question I have, Gracie, is how can just a regular person like myself, what can I do to make sure that I'm helping to conserve water and keep water clean?
Yeah. So the first most important thing is if you go to an area that has water, to go to Washington, the state of Washington, or even Northern California, one thing you don't see are sprinklers on, the whole day, right? and that's an issue that we really have here in Southern California, is they turn their sprinklers on and their sidewalks are completely wet and you see water going down. And just because I work for flood control and I'm going to plug it, it's actually prohibited for you to send irrigation water down to our storm drain. Yeah, anything that is not storm water should not be going into our storm drain. So that's just a FYI. So that's one good way to conserve water. Metropolitan Water District as well as Western Municipal Water District have programs where you can get rebates for turning your landscape from a very water heavy dependent landscape to a drought friendly landscape, and you can get money back if you change your landscape, right? Putting plants that are drought tolerant, that are water tolerant, or that require less water. Than that even includes there are grasses that require less water. So looking into programs like those, that's the best way to conserve water. Yeah.
For sure. What about air quality? How familiar are you with our region's air quality? I mean, it's clearly bad. Mm-hmm. I mean, last year we had 87 days straight where we violated the federal ozone standards, right, in our South Coast air quality basin. And so I'm sure that's something that also drives your passion as well. And so I just want to hear some of your thoughts as to what's going on, right? There's a lot of, warehouse development taking place, which is bringing in a lot of these trucks. And so, I mean, are you concerned for the health of our community?
Yeah. So I am completing a master's degree in environmental science. So I'm familiar with air quality. I professionally haven't done much, but one thing that we forget to think about, I know, I'm just going to always tie it to water, is that our air quality affects our water quality, right? It completely does. Let me give you a quick example. It's just a quick example. In Lake Tahoe, they have a eutrophication problem, and they've done everything to try to get rid of it. And what they found is the reason they can't get rid of it is because there's nitrogen in there. Naturally, there's nitrogen in the air, which is when it's mixed with all the stuff coming out of our cars, then becomes into nitrous oxide, and that's the beautiful brown San Bernardino skies that we have, right? So, yes, I'm concerned about the fact that, I read an article yesterday, it was yesterday, that I don't have the numbers on me, but that the air that Latinos and Black people breathe is worse than the air that white people breathe.
Yeah, that was the Union for Concerned Scientists.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I mean, I'm fortunate that I live in a pretty nice area, but at the end of the day, this is killing our community, and it should concern every single one of us. It doesn't matter who's breathing this air; it's actually killing us, and we can do something about it. That's what is the most frustrating part. Same thing with what I'm talking about in Imperial Valley. Is like we can actually do something about it. We can come off of, fossil fuels. We can do it. It's actually possible, and including not building warehouses in communities where there are human children running around, where there are schools placed. So these are simple fixes that for some reason seem to be too simple for our community, for our leaders to implement. And so I think that advocating for those types of simple fixes is very important.
Yeah, and on that note, I think what we don't realize, because I read that article as well, and we posted it on our pages, and I was seeing a lot of comments about, well, I mean, obviously this affects everyone. I mean, why does it have to be about race? The fact of the matter is that it is about race because it's environmental racism, just period, right? The fact that there's our communities weren't set up like this by accident, right? This was set up by design. And that's my belief as an environmental justice advocate, right? That developers in our communities see this land, our pristine land, as an opportunity. They see dollar signs when they see land. They don't have the same mindset that we have of protecting the land and protecting our resources because they don't live here, right? And so I understand, right? This obviously everybody breathes bad air quality, right? It doesn't matter what ethnicity, what race you are. But the fact of the matter is, and the facts show, that people of color are disproportionately affected by air quality, by the poor air quality, and all kinds of contamination, right? Like you mentioned, water contamination that's happening in Flint, Michigan right now. I mean, they're still trying to resolve that, right? And that wasn't an accident, right? That wasn't an accident. And so I think that's something to remember, right? And so I'm kind of getting on a soapbox, so I'll kind of move on. So, you know, our youth are obviously an important component to the work that we're doing here in this community. And so what are your thoughts about the youth in our community and just some of the resilience that they have? I'm not sure if you work with youth. I'm sure you do. I mean, you're young, right? You're yeah, exactly. So I mean, what are your thoughts about just, you know, our generation, right? The millennial generation, and some of the other folks that are stepping up now, and really taking that ball of leadership.
Right. Well, it's just interesting seeing, we were at the Women's March a couple of weeks ago, and just how many young girls are frankly a lot further advanced than I was in this spectrum. They understand the issues, they understand how to move, how to navigate politically, how to navigate as advocates. And so it gives you hope. It gives you a lot of hope, but then it also can be kind of scary, because just how we see people advocating for social justice, for environmental justice, young kids, I mean, in high school, they're advocating. You also know that there is a polar opposite, right? There is that pole. So there are young kids doing the complete opposite and being driven to become these warehouse gurus, or these people that look at our land and see dollar signs. And so you wonder how polarizing right now our times are polarizing, and you wonder how much more polarizing they will become unless we step up and we say, okay, how do we work together to fix these issues, rather than continuing this dipole, moving things where no, it just doesn't feel like it's getting closer. And so it can become a little scary sometimes. I have, like I said, I have 3 kids, and I don't look forward to a time when they're my age, because I'm not sure if things will have been better or they'll be worse. And right now, sometimes it feels like things aren't getting a little better. And so we really have to work together, even just in our own communities, educating our communities, ensuring that everybody understands the real issues that are at hand, make sure people are paying attention, so that when things get really bad, we're together and we're working together, rather than being split or divided. Yeah, for sure. I hope that made sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense, because we are in polarizing times, and it is difficult. I mean, sometimes when you're doing this work, it could become very overwhelming. And I know I have compañeras on our team that shout out to them, because they really lead the work that is, because sometimes just consume you and overwhelm you, right? Because it's not easy, right? Going up to a resident and seeing them struggling to breathe. Just the other day I spoke to a resident, and he can't even go outside because he can't breathe. He had surgery, a double lung transplant surgery, and it's sad, and it's sad to say the least, and it's frustrating. But I think that also drives young folks to want to change, right? And I think as a parent, I'm sure you think about the best ways to try to uplift your child or your children, and really set the path for a better future, right? And I think that's the mission, right? People are not always going to agree, right? That's the beautiful thing about having a democracy, right? I know it doesn't seem like a democracy at times, but there is some hope, right? And I think we're seeing a lot of good leaders. We're seeing a lot of good people step up, and I think that's where we need to be heading, right? We need to start motivating people in our communities to try to be leaders, right? And I think I'm sure somebody encouraged you to become a leader, right? Whether that was a professor or whether that was someone, your parents, or maybe someone else in the community. And the same thing was, happened to me. And I think everyone should have that goal to try to advance to always set the path for a better future for the future generations, right? Because that's always the goal. Just like people in the past advocated for us to have the rights we have, we got to do the same, right? And the moment we stop, that's where when we're doomed. And so my last question, Gracie, before I let you go, is how do you like CCAEJ? How do you like being on our board? And I mean, what are your thoughts about the work we do here?
Okay, great. Good question. Well, I am fairly new. My first meeting won't be until next month, but I am incredibly impressed at the resilience that I see coming out of this organization. I've been paying attention to the Flying J issue in Harupa Valley, and just the amount of fight that is in this group is very impressive, and I am very proud to say that I am on the board, because it's very difficult now to find people that are not just passionate but hardworking. You always see the opposite, right? You see people that are passionate but don't really get anything done, or you see people that are the ones that are getting things done that don't really have passion, or their passion is placed in the wrong place, right? So I love knowing that I will be serving a organization like this that has really done a lot to advance the narrative of environmental justice and social justice. And I think that we're gonna continue to do great things. I'm very excited. I hope that I do become an asset to the organization, but mostly it's very humbling to be part of it. So thanks.
Absolutely. So Gracie, thank you so much for coming on. And folks, thanks for watching again. This has been another episode of Let's Clear the Air. Peace.